Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater, and I'm so delighted today to be talking about the fantastic new film, Land. We have director and actor Robin Wright and Demián Bichir, who plays Miguel in the film. And Robin, I wanted to start by asking you a little bit about your work directing, because I love the way that you've talked about how in directing episodes of House of Cards, you really learned the need to just let actors breathe and give them their space and then come in a little bit later when you felt like they needed you. And particularly for a film like this, in working with yourself and Demián, how did that really infiltrate into the way that you communicated with him and just allowed so many moments in the film to just breathe and for him to find the performance in the quiet moments between the lines?
Well, thankfully, he knew this character inside out. So there was not a need for a lot of communication. We had one meeting 2 months before we started shooting. We didn't have any rehearsal time, and nor did we have much discussion time after our first meeting, really, because I was up there in the throes of it. And we only had 29 days to shoot this movie also. So thank God Demián knew who Miguel was. And when he came over to my house for the first meeting, I wanted him so badly for this part. I was like, I can't imagine anybody else in it. And when he said, I have to do this movie, I need to play this part, I thought, what a gift to have that connection, that kismet. And when he walked in my house, we literally had the same dynamic chemistry that you see on the screen. It was like whereas my friend had been lost for 30 years and he walked in the door.
And Demián, I loved how you were describing that even before working with Robin on this film, that you had such a sense of the type of director that she was going to be, particularly based on the choices that she makes as an actor. And so when you first got the script and started reading it, how did that help in really envisioning the way that you saw her putting together and building this film as a director?
Well, you build many different expectations regarding, many people that you admire. And then when you get to know him and work so close together, it can go either way. It can be very rewarding or disappointing sometimes. And it was just so beautiful to witness her journey into this new adventure that is called this animal called a film. And because we've done TV and that we know how that is, and that's a really, really incredibly difficult monster to tame. And she did it beautifully, in the episodes that I saw her name as a director. And but to see how she carried the entire ship into a happy destination, and everybody following her lead. She earned everyone's respect. A director can only do what he wants to do, what he has in mind, if he gets everyone's respect, because that's how, they can trust you and they can just follow you. And it is a very difficult task, because any director is under everyone's scrutiny, especially if you're a woman, and especially if you're a superstar like Robin, right, as an actor. And then, she's gonna have to prove herself. No, she didn't have to do anything. It was just flowing naturally and beautifully. And it's just a confirmation how great artists are also the kindest people. And that's really beautiful to see, and confirm over and over.
Yeah. And Robin, one of the things that I think that you do so beautifully in the film and that I loved was the framing and the use of camera work, and particularly the intimacy and the way that you capture Edie, especially in those first moments in the film where nobody else is able to infiltrate her. That's our only window into her soul. And you used so many great moments of really just bringing the camera in very close. And so I wanted to ask about the choices in the way that you use the camera work to really convey her as a character in that way.
Well, long discussions with our DP, Bobby Bukowski. And we were talking about the acts in the film, that there are 3 acts. You've got grief and loss, trauma, and then you've got the rescue phase, and then you've got the rebirth. And we referenced a lot of films to each other. For instance, in Act One, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve, getting the viewer to be going on this journey with her. Not necessarily being in her head, but literally on the journey. And how do we convey that when there's only one person on screen for the first 15 minutes of the movie? And we decided to, yes, get closer sometimes, but not use handheld. Like once the world starts to crumble around her and take her with it, that's when we started to pull out the handheld and get more raw. And then once she starts to commune with nature, once Miguel, the character, teaches her how to respect the place in which she lives, then she can at once be, at one with it. So what does that mean? That means opening up the space and seeing her in the environment at one with the environment.
Yeah. And Demián, one of the really fascinating things in watching Miguel as a character is how frugal he is with words. He's someone who doesn't say anything unless he really has thought about it very concisely. And it really means something when he says anything out loud. And so how did that make you think about the lines of dialogue that he does have really differently in knowing that there was such deep meaning, even in the smallest inflections of words?
Well, it makes me very happy that when people get exactly what we wanted to do, and you got it so clear. It's one of the things that trapped me from this character when I read the script. I saw in it a big chance to explore different things that I hadn't tried before. I love playing the subtext. And in doing that, you need to understand exactly what you do not have to say or whatever is not said. And we had this wonderful opportunity in this film, over and over again in every scene. And but not only frugal in words, but also emotions and his own physicality. Even when they're, exploring and going hunting and all that, he's very, very down to earth and calm. He flows with nature, and he flows almost with the wind. And it's like effortless. And I love that. When I see silence, I love to go into the actor's eyes and see what's happening inside. I love that as an audience. So when I see that in an actor, that's something that really amazes me. And we wanted to achieve that. And, from everything that we've been hearing, I think we did.
Yeah. And, both of these characters are two people who they're not demanding anything from the other person, but they're also not expecting anything. And I think that really falls into the movement and the spacing of scenes that the two of you have together as well. They might sit right next to each other, but they're not directly touching each other. And there's such poignancy when they even just touch hands towards the end of the movie, because you're not even moving into each other's space within scenes. So how did you actually really think about the way in which they constantly keep that respectful distance, but still have a connectivity emotionally with each other?
I don't know. It's a great question, because it never felt manufactured. I didn't feel like we had to achieve it. It was there. That was our dynamic. And the script also, we didn't improvise. That was pretty much the script. What we did do a lot of the time is trim words, because less was more. And that's what I think it was asking for. Because yes, she says, please don't give me anything from the outside world. And basically, I'm not going to share anything about my life. And he respects that. So when Demi and I were talking about it in the beginning, we had one word, and it kind of was the conclusion to everything you just mentioned, which was he is her saint. Yeah. So if you had somebody like that in your life, it's your guru.
Yeah. Was it that same sense of innateness and just feeling it so instantly between the two of you in the terms of the pacing of the scenes? Because it feels like you really allow moments to just sit and breathe and find the time that they need. There's no rush when they even share lines with dialogue. It's not even that one person says something and the other person immediately responds. Maybe there's a few seconds pausing between. So I wanted to ask about the way in which you just allowed those moments to sit and breathe organically.
Well, I think a lot of it, like when we're sitting in the field, having a conversation finally about, us, we were so cold. I don't think the words could come out very fast. We were frozen and we needed to be playing like we were sitting there in summer. I'm telling you, it was bitter cold. So no, I'm kidding that was the reason. But I keep going back to, I don't really have an answer. Do you, Demián? It was just kind of, it came naturally, and he understood this character so well that, again, there wasn't a need for, oh, let's add more exposition, or you and I need to talk about the meaning of each sentence. Wasn't needed.
I love that answer, though. I'm going to steal it from you from now on. But I think you're very humble, because of course I knew Miguel. Yes, I better, right? But you knew Edie, like since you decided to play this role right at the end, when we were about to begin shooting, and we didn't have any Edie, right? But you already knew her, by going through this over and over again, and I think what you see on the screen is exactly what your director wants, to put out there. And I'm not. It's not only when she directed those scenes, when she dictated the pace of the scenes, but also when you go back, when you finish and you edit the film, when you are in the editing room, that's also your hand, your eye. It's the director's decision to give it that pace and to keep it that way, and it's just beautiful because everything's so fast nowadays, everything has to be rushed, and so just to take a moment and see what the other person is thinking, I think that's a beautiful thing, not only for us actors, but also for, the audience.
Yeah. And I did want to ask about that moment in the film where they're sitting together leaning against the tree, and she just says the simple words, "I did have a family." And to that point, that's the most that she's shared about anything about herself and her life before she came to this cabin. And the two of you, in very different ways, with those few words, really capture so much between the delivery of that line and what you're actually telling him. And then Demián, just that singular look that you give that conveys, "I understand all the different things that you're telling me with this, I understand that it took so much to say that and that you can't say anymore." And so I wanted to ask the both of you about the journey of really finding the moment within that scene in particular, because I think it's such a memorable moment from the film as a whole.
You said it so beautifully.
You just said it, yeah. You nailed it.
There's nothing else for us to do or say.
Don't have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Done, we're out of time. Robin, I also wanted to ask you about your work with Dr. James Gordon, and he travels to countries and does a lot of work that he's constructed with people who have gone through real world trauma. And you actually, in part of your preparation for this character, went and did a session with him after asking him several questions as Edie. And so I wanted to really ask you about the discovery of her as a character and really understanding her grief and her trauma in such a specific way from that experience with him.
Yeah, what a gift that was. Erin Dignam, who was the second writer of the screenplay, introduced me to him. And she said, "I think you might want to do a session with him as the character, because you've been so cognitive with her for 18 months, 2 years. Maybe you just need to get in the skin." And I did one and a half hour session with him via Zoom, because it was during COVID, because it was when we needed to do some additional photography on the movie. And it was the most beneficial thing I'd ever done, because I didn't even realize that we were in a session until it ended. He takes you to a level, it's almost like you're being hypnotized. And I said, what was that? Because it's almost the same, like when you're acting and you're in a take and it's going so well and you're so connected to the emotion and you're so immersed in the character. And then the director calls cut and you don't even remember that you did the take. Right, Demián? You're like, whoa, I guess that means I nailed it. That's what it was like working with him and talking with him. It was the way he enabled me to bring it out instead of him bringing it out like a therapist would. And him just talking to me in depth about the different layers of trauma and how you have to break through each one. And you have to literally go through each of those tunnels to come out on the other side. And boy, I had no idea how many layers there were.
Yeah, that's incredible and feeds into your performance so much. And you know, Demián Miguel has his own trauma that he's dealing with and processing, and also this huge feeling of guilt and regret. And even though he's had a few years to process it, it still lives and breathes with him. How did you think about the specificity of his trauma and the way that you wanted to carry it in very quiet and small ways throughout the film?
I wanted to make sure that that part of the character was key and crucial to the character and not to the story, not to distract anyone from the it is a journey. And to me, it was very important to make you feel that there was something going on, that there was something behind those eyes and inside that person that could be worth discovering. And I just love how we created this thing about, come with us, come with us, come with us. We will tell you, if you are patient and if you follow us, then you will know more. And it comes out when it's time. And to me, that was a really interesting way to approach those emotions, because it was like a volcano type of thing. Although it's been a long time since he lost his family to his own fault. But even then, when you carry that with such calmness, then I think it becomes interesting. And somehow Miguel is the result of whatever Edie will be later on, because he already overcame those steps in the process of grieving and overcoming pain and all that. So he's been there, he knows all that. And he senses that there's something there in her life too. And he doesn't need to know anything else. And through helping her, he finds his own redemption. And I think that's a beautiful way to link both stories.
He's also a character who has such a staunch sense of loyalty and, what I say is what I'm going to do, from that very early scene where she asks him not to bring any news of the outside world. And, his response is, what if aliens land on Earth? But he really stays true to that right until the very end. And when you looked at lines like that in the script, how did that really help you in constructing him as a character? Because it tells you so much about his core sense of values and who he is on every level.
Oh, absolutely. I think the main key word is respect. He is deeply respectful of whatever she's going through, and whatever that is, it's her own process. And I'm only here to help. I'm here to make sure that you don't fall on your face. I will be here. And as the song that we sing, says, I will be right there when the walls, come crumbling down and all that. I will be right there to hold you, right behind you. And And I think that's beautiful. That's one of the words, that's one of the things. I will be respectful, and he says that to his sister-in-law. We have to respect her wishes, and also when he answers to her, why are you helping me? Because you were in my path. And that, to me, and to Robin as well, that hit us when we first read the script, because how many people just turn around and look away when you have that chance to help somebody else?
Yeah. And then Robin, in terms of Edie's journey, sometimes we see characters go into a space of isolation and escaping everything because they just need some temporary reprieve. But it really feels like the journey that she goes on throughout the movie, that this is something that is really deeply grounded and rooted in her, and that her life is irrevocably changed forever now, and the way that she's going to live is always going to be different because of this. And so when you were thinking about bringing her back from the brink gradually, how did you think about and make sure that the choices that she makes and the impact that this experience has on her was so deeply rooted and grounded within her to such a degree that it really feels like part of the fabric of who she is by the end of the film?
Right. Well, I mean, it was in the script that you get to see later. It's an homage to her family, to go there, to choose to try to live there, try to survive there. And you're supposed to ask the question, is this a deliberate suicide attempt? Not necessarily. Is it bound and determined to survive? Not necessarily. But cognitively, you think, as a woman, I can do this because I've read 4 manuals on how to live off the grid. Well, it doesn't work that way at all. And we wanted to definitely portray that beast that nature is, that you have to do it the right way, or it will get you. And that's that beautiful link that Demián was talking about. That's why that character, and it just, people say, why the script? And it was that line. It was, why are you helping me? Because you were in my path. I have a duty to be responsible to that. And that's a spiritual belief, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then because Demián was mentioning, obviously the scene that many people are talking about where they're sitting by the campfire and singing the song, I actually wanted to ask you, Robin, about the framing of that, because it's such an interesting choice to have them both in complete silhouette. We can't see any details on your faces. And yet that is the moment where, she opens up in a very different way and lets her guard down, by joining him at that moment. It's something that he's been singing that song, probably every time that he's come to see her up to that point. And that's the first time that she becomes part of it. So it's a really beautiful moment. And so I wanted to ask you about the reason behind choosing to frame it in that particular way with the silhouettes and the shadows.
Well, truthfully, we were losing the light, and we knew we wanted to get a 2-shot profile. And I saw playback and I was like, we don't need coverage. And anyway, if we did coverage, we were going to have to pull artificial light and it wouldn't match. But really, emotionally, it just played for me in silhouette. And I thought metaphorically it read just like what you said, that she's not completely out of the woods. She's not completely trusting, but you see 2 of them in a frame, and the silhouette is what makes you feel the connection. These 2 Black subjects, which it always reminded me of, remember Disneyland? And you'd go and you'd get your face drawn the way Walt Disney used to do, and they would do Black silhouette profile. And I remember seeing that as a kid thinking, I can feel what that person is emoting. And it's just a profile silhouette of drawing. And I could feel the person. So when I saw that first take, I was like, we got it. It's in the can. We don't need to do coverage,
And with that scene, there's a lightness and a brevity to that moment. And there's a few other moments, like the alien joke that we were mentioning, the moment where he's eating bacon in the kitchen. And so I wanted to ask you both about finding the lightness and finding those comedic moments. It obviously is a very emotionally wrought movie, but finding those moments and the tone of that in a way that doesn't pull you out of the rest of the film, because you do that in such a fantastic way that it all feels really cohesive and connected and very true.
I mean, it was on the page. It was definitely written. And then you got this guy playing Miguel. Come on. I mean, Demián's so soulful and so damn funny at the same time. So that was kind of added later to say, this guy is humorous. Let's give him some funny lines and make him sing. Because, his next career, if you want, is the karaoke king. We've decided he's going to go on the road with karaoke.
Sold out shows.
Sold out shows during COVID.
During COVID. Bring your mask.
And then, Robin, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the landscape that you shoot the movie in. You found such a beautiful setting for the film, but I also think that the way that you really capture it with the camera and worked with your cinematographer on those elements, and the fact that you managed to capture 4 seasons within 29 days, which is very impressive. And I'm glad that the weather worked out in that way. But also you allow the elements to really speak to the journey that Edie and Miguel are going on together as well. And there's, some really beautiful cutaway shots that you pull in. So how did you really just look to the landscape around you and find the way that you want it to be such a central part of the story in that visual way?
Well, once you got up on the top of that mountain, 8,000 feet up, it's so majestic. That area in Alberta, Canada, it's one of the most beautiful spots I've ever seen in my life. You have to capture it because it is a character in and of itself. Those vistas, the landscape, and Bobby slept in the cabin most of the 29 days in Edie's sleeping bag so that he could have the camera readily available on his shoulder if a storm came in or a beautiful sunrise or a snowstorm hit. And he would grab that camera at all hours of the night and just go shoot it.
And then, for both of your characters, you have to have such an adeptness with the land itself. And, we see that in 2 very different ways. We see Edie at the beginning when she's a little uncertain of how to do things, but then she really figures it out and finds her footing. And then for Miguel, he really has to have that adeptness right from the beginning, and it's second nature to him. He has to know that land, okay, there's a tree 10 feet that way. I'm going to walk this way because of that. And I know that you had a mountain man who was local to the area who was working with you, on the space that you were working in. And teaching you a lot of the skills that you needed to showcase in the film. But how did you really take what he was teaching you and carry that through into character elements and thinking about their relationship with the land around them and the way that they would move and breathe within that space?
Demián.
Well, it was a must, to play Miguel. I really needed to, give you that feeling that I am from there. And I remember my mountain guy, the first time he saw me, because my beard was longer and I had my hat with me and all that, and he was like, you look like the real thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a blessing right there. Beautiful, thank you, Father. And then he taught us everything. He was so kind, and I went fishing with him alone. And that alone it's another world. You need to get like 4 different courses and become a doctor in order to do that properly. And then everything that you think it's very easy to do, it is not at all. Like chopping wood, and I remember asking him, so what is the risk if you don't do it properly? Well, you can chop off your leg. Okay, we don't want that to happen here. Okay, so how do you do it? It only looks easy, but it's really like a lot of everything in order for us to do it, to make it look easy. You know what I mean? So people can believe that. And then, but that's how we are, as actors. We're so obsessive, and we go into it really until we nail it correctly. And it was just a lot of fun to learn all that, because I'm a city man. I grew up in Mexico City, I lived in New York, and then Los Angeles, and so I'm not an outdoors person. So when I'm out there, in front of an ocean or up in that mountain, it's just so beautiful. Everything changes in you. Your spirit and your heart and your mind evolves into a different level.
Yeah.
So true.
And filming out in that space, obviously, there's certain logistical constraints that then come into place. I know that one of them was the fact that craft services couldn't be sitting out because of bears, so they had to come around with a wheelbarrow of treats and sandwiches. But what were some of the logistical constraints that then carried through into thinking about how you were going to film certain scenes, or even just like exist in this setting as you were filming?
We followed the weather. And it really did dictate our schedule. So basically every night, and when we wrapped, we would get a call sheet and we would just kind of ball it up and throw it in the trash. We were like, that doesn't mean anything, because who knows what we're going to get in the morning when we show up at 5 o'clock. So everybody was on their toes. We had an incredibly hardworking crew, the Calgary and Alberta crew members. They're so used to it. Thank goodness, because they guided us, and they forewarned us. They could smell it like a dog smells, an earthquake coming. We'd be shooting a summer scene, and one of the guys would be like, "Yep, the Chinooks are coming in 20 minutes. You guys better buckle down the hatches, and you're gonna have to move on to another season. You better shoot something else, because the rain's just gonna be a deluge." He was right.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the incredibly extensive experience that both of you have in the industry, what do you feel like you had the opportunity to learn that you're going to continue to carry with you from the experience of making this movie for each of you?
I know how to cut wood. So do you, buddy. So do you. You're pretty good.
We're ready for that. I see a future, like a real future there. Karaoke and chopping wood. I'm going to go
at the same time.
House. Yeah.
See how many things you get to learn as an actor? You get to learn how to be so many different people.
Everything I know and everything I am is because of an actor, my actor, because of roles that I played before. I'm not kidding. Everything at all. So I'm just happy to, I will take so many great things in my heart from this film. I truly enjoy the whole thing, because I'm a tropical fish, and I'm not, really good under that weather. And I remember taking it all in, enjoying every second of it. This crazy weather conditions and everything about it, everybody, they were all so kind. But again, it's the director who sets up the mood of your set. And trust me, I've been in some really heavy duty type of sets that when you enter, it's like, oh, what's happening here? You know what I mean? You sense that because of, the head of the project, it's in a really weird, crazy mode. And so to me, this is only a confirmation of, that again, I've been working with, great directors, and here I am again with another great one.
Yeah. And Robin, how do you feel that you got the opportunity to really evolve your stylistic sensibility as a director from making this?
Oh, I've got so far to go. This is only the beginning. It was a learning experience, as they all will be, I'm sure, but I need to do it more.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more I'm seeking, Yeah.
I can't wait for that. And if this is you just at the beginning feeling like you have so much more to learn, we're so lucky for the future films that you're going to make. And I want to thank both of you for, sharing this tremendous film with us and taking time to have this conversation today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.